My name is Tom Korn. I'm the Senior Vice President of Security Products at VMware. Today, the single, maybe biggest, our best application of virtualization to security has really been in the preventive area. And that's been micro-segmentation. Micro-segmentation is really the ability to create a logical boundary around an application and use that boundary to align preventive controls around that application and to set up a least privilege environment for that application. And it has the impact of reducing the attack surface, simplifying security, and greatly improving sort of signal to noise, of making any odd things stand out much more. And I think it's probably had the single biggest impact on sort of preventive measures that we've had in a long time. In the absence of it, and before this really was around, what we saw was that companies were spending the majority of their time, money, and resources on preventing infiltration into the environment. And it's very logical because we have handles for our perimeter. We know where the front door is to the data center. The challenge we have is everyone recognizes it's such a large attack surface, there's just too many ways for a threat to come in. And once it's in, well, in a modern data center, that often meant it had the keys to the kingdom, because all these distributed applications, these multi-tiered applications, drove us to create relatively flat network architectures. And that makes it, in some ways, easier to just add the next application and the components will be able to talk to each other. But it also meant that an attacker who gets in could easily move around the environment from any machine to any other machine, and that's at the root of so much of our issue. Micro-segmentation opened the door to create far better visibility and control inside that environment. And again, the first thing that people using it for has been creating a least privilege environment around the application, aligning preventive controls to that application, and increasingly kind of locking that down and creating a much smaller attack surface for that application. It's been the biggest driver of network virtualization of almost any use case, has been micro-segmentation in this security use case. In terms of where this is going, some of it will be extending the concept of micro-segmentation, how we lock that down even further. A good example of that is the use of encryption with micro-segmentation. Encryption is an incredibly effective control for protecting things against the physical underlay. For example, someone who takes control of a switch would have the ability to sniff traffic, gather sensitive information, spoof or pretend to be another machine. And encryption is a very good means of sort of protecting against that. And the challenge has always been how incredibly complex encryption would be to use. You'd need to set up point-to-point encryption tunnels and manage all the keys and figure out how to chain controls that needed to be able to see the data. In a virtual environment, it opens the door for us to really do some magical things and make encryption almost a drag and drop operation onto a microsegment or an application, and ensure that all of the data in flight or at rest is encrypted in an incredibly simple manner. So one of the directions is things like encryption, which further reinforce that microsegment boundary and have the impact of really improving our preventive measures, lowering the attack surface. For folks who are interested in learning more, we're planning an incredibly exciting session at the RSA conference, Thursday, February 16th at 1:30. It's called How Virtualization and Cloud Could Fundamentally Transform Security. And we're going to talk about a bit more detail about these issues. We're going to talk about how organizations, what are the techniques and approaches organizations are using today? What's the cutting edge today? And we're also going to start getting into futures and directions so people can start to get some insight into where some of this is going.